I will come back and free you, Mom. I promise.
Be brave, and don't look back.
Anakin sped through space as he sat back in the pilot's chair, cutting circles into Dooku's severed head with his lightsaber as it rolled on the ground. The smell of the cooking flesh began to annoy him, so he kicked it into the corner of the room and turned around to face the ship's destination. Course was set for Genosis. Shouldn't be long now, he thought. All he could think about was the hologram Dooku showed him of his mother, and the note which said that they also had Padme. A small part of him was excited to see her, even though she was held captive. It had been over 13 years, after all. The last time he left Tatooine, he had told his mother he'd be leaving to become a Jedi, only hoping that she would understand his life and the choices he was forced to make through Maul. None of that mattered anymore. He knew his duty, and it was going to be the hardest thing he had ever faced. As he paced the ship, thinking of different scenarios that could unveil when he would fight Maul and Sidious, trying to anticipate their moves and come up with different strategies. He lingered on the fear of Maul unleashing his powers, and even if he did kill his master, he still had the Emperor to deal with. All of Anakin's life, he felt a large buildup within him. Even when he had not met Qui-Gon or the others, before his life was turned upside down, he knew there was a rage brewing within him that he had not tapped into, and was almost beckoning for him to let go and release it. No matter what happened to him, the torture Maul put him through, the pain of not seeing his mother, the fear of not being able to survive under the harsh conditions, he still could not break. He tried so many times, so many moments passed where he felt it slipping, felt himself finally letting go, no matter the anger or the loss he experienced. The only extent of his reactions would be tears or anger, but the bottled up feeling never went away. Like a big sneeze that would just constantly linger at the tip of your nose, taunting and teasing, but never happening. Anakin stood as the planet approached, its bright, rusty sand-like complexion glowing in front of his face like a growing orb. He set coordinates to land where him and Maul had originally planned to intercept Dooku and Palpatine. Throwing off the cloak he was wearing, he didn't need it, nor did he wish to stay hidden any longer. 13 years was long enough. Grabbing a small sack with a drawstring, he put Dooku's disfigured, severed head and sealed it in the bag. He couldn't wait to throw it to Maul's feet. He readied his lightsaber on his belt, stood and faced the front of the door of the ship as he landed, pressing the gate to open. His eyes still, face stern, and mind ready. The Force was with him now. There was no turning back. As the doors opened, his eyes were met with the piercing light of the planet's sun. As he landed on a roofless, suspended hangar on the side of a mountain, he put the bag on his back and walked down the ramp of his ship, entering the largest opening of a man-made cave he had ever seen. Looking around him, he saw no sight of anyone, his force powers extremely attuned to his surroundings. He made sure his footsteps made no noise. He could hear whimpering from around the corner. With every inclination of his soul, he wanted to see who was in pain, but he knew it would have been just a trap. Waiting behind the corner of the stone wall, he placed his hand by his lightsaber just in case anything were to happen. Maul and Sidious, after all, were the galaxy's most skilled at the ability of stealth and hiding their presence. This was his moment. From here on, everything would change to his favor, or the Sith's. The fate of the galaxy rested upon his shoulders, upon this very moment. He could feel the rage build up even more now, as if it hadn't marinated enough on the ship to the planet. Like carbonated water in a tin canister, he couldn't wait any longer. Swiveling around the corner, he ignited his lightsaber only to see nothing. No one. He was standing in some sort of gargantuan oval room. Perhaps 1,000 people could fit in here, he thought to himself. His lightsaber was the only thing making noise. Sheathing it back onto his belt, the place seemed familiar, as if he had been here in a past life. Looking around, guarded, seeing nothing or no one, except a small hexagonal round object with string laying several meters away from him at the other end of the room. He knew what that was. He ran to it, bending down as he covered his mouth with one hand and picked it up with the other. Dooku's head swiveling in the bag from Anakin's shoulders and back to the middle again as he stood upright, his eyes beginning to turn orange with hatred as they leaked tears streaming down the crevices of his face. It was the necklace he had given to Padme 13 years ago on her ship with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. He remembered how she said she'd keep it forever. It looked burnt and charred. His mind raced as he could feel a darkness blanket the room like a sea of evil drowning every ounce of air. "You," he said in a defiant voice as he turned to face his old master, Darth Maul stood at the end of the room with his hood shadowing his face. "Where are they?" Anakin yelled. "You're going to pay for what you've done." The rage was not slipping. It was the most uncomfortable feeling he had ever experienced, as if someone had to vomit but nothing would come up. He stared at Maul as the assassin's eyes glowed orange through his hood. "You betrayed me," said Maul. "And you ran," replied Anakin, "like a coward, because you know I'm more powerful than you or your puppeteer Sith." From behind the shadows, a shadow darker than it had emerged, cloaked and hooded in black with pale hands outstretched through the sleeves of his robe. Blue veins like ice protruding from the Emperor's fine skin as the tail of his cloak floated effortlessly behind his every smooth step. Anakin could only see his lips. They were thin and cracked as they curled up in a sinister smirk. As he stood slightly behind Maul, he pointed to Anakin with his small, long, thin finger. "The prodigy has arrived."
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Maul uncrossed his arms and slid his cloak down his broad shoulders as it crumpled on the floor. He pushed it away using his mind, tossing it to the side of the room. The hilt of his double-bladed lightsaber twirling in his hand as he grabbed it from the belt of his tunic. Anakin took the bag off his back, opened it, and grabbed Dooku's impaled, half-cut face by the hair, tossing it in the air and slicing it immediately with his lightsaber. Holding both halves of the head with the Force, he threw it to Maul with vicious speed, who looked disgusted with a slight smirk on his face as if he had enjoyed it. The Emperor, shocked at the evident death of Dooku, who was supposed to have returned by now, stared at the face not with disgust but with a look of dissatisfaction, as if he were insulted that he even gave Dooku any training at all to be killed so easily. Anakin's voice echoed heavily through the chamber. "I'll do the same with your head, my master, and then yours, your highness," as he looked towards Sidious with a cold gaze, almost lifeless. "Come," said Palpatine, as he looked to the corner of the room which led to another smaller pathway, as two droids came out holding a carbon box. Palpatine motioned them towards Anakin. As the droids walked over to Skywalker with the package, Anakin, taking no chances, crushed them using the dark side, then threw them back at the Emperor, who literally disintegrated it without moving a muscle, just inches before his face, as his eyes began to glow gold from deep within his hood. The box lay on the ground where Anakin had crushed the droids several feet in front of him. Pulling the box towards himself, he questioned the purpose of this act, as the Emperor's voice echoed throughout the room. "Open it. Inside are the tools to set you free. The tools to complete your training, to make you my apprentice." Maul quickly turned to face his master, confused and perplexed. Sidious continued, "I had planned it all along for you to be trained by my apprentice, thinking you were kept a secret so that you could overthrow me with him. But I had planned all along to bring you here, to set you free. To test yourself, to see if you are worthy to learn the true power of the dark side. This is why I had you encounter Dooku first. He was your first test. I'm sure you can guess who is your second. The third and final test will be to kneel at my feet and pledge yourself to my teachings. However, first, you will open the gift I have given you. Unlock your powers, young Skywalker." Anakin, shocked at the level of planning for over 13 years that the Emperor had schemed and manifested into reality. Everything he had planned to happen was happening before their eyes in real time. He was truly brilliantly evil. Anakin could feel the box calling to him. Could this finally be the tool he needed to make him the most powerful in the galaxy? Perhaps opening it would give him the power he needed to kill Sidious and Maul indefinitely. He had control over his powers. He wouldn't be turned to the Emperor's servant. He walked over to the box, inching closer with every step. Anakin, no! Jedi Master Mace Windu and Master Yoda had appeared behind Sidious and Maul, both their lightsabers at the ready, illuminating their shadows with purple and green. "Open the box, you must not," said Yoda in a very serious manner. This was the first time Anakin had seen Master Windu and Yoda since the Jedi Council had briefly tested Anakin's abilities upon Qui-Gon's request. Qui-Gon communicated with Master Yoda from the other realm. He told us everything that had happened. We had to get here before the box was opened. Anakin didn't understand. What was the deal with this box? Was it some ultimate lightsaber that could cut through other laser swords? He didn't understand, but he knew he didn't respond well to orders by anyone. Listening to himself, he walked to the box, ignoring Windu's cries to stay away, while Sidious beckoned for Anakin to do it, to become the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, telling him if he didn't, he would regret it. forever. Mace and Yoda rushed Sidious and Maul, all four entering in the most amazing fight of the galaxy. The red blades swirling all around purple and green as Yoda flipped, jumped, and bounced off walls, matching Sidious' speeds, while Mace harnessed his abilities to use the dark and light sides of the Force, keeping up with Maul's every move. They both had mastered the 7th form of lightsaber combat. However, Mace's variant, called the Pod, used a slightly different style than Maul's, circling each other and switching opponents when the time was right, Yoda and Maul outdoing each backflip and acrobatic move with the next one as Mace and Sidious entwined in a dance of death. All that could be seen were colored orbs of light moving faster than any other creature could even keep track of. Anakin wanted nothing more than to kill them, but he wanted more power than anything else. He wanted it more than seeing his mother, or Padme for that matter. He wanted his destiny to become a reality, to turn himself into the most powerful entity in the galaxy. If that was what was in this box, and that could help him, even slightly, he would take no chances. Crouching in front of the package, holding Padme's necklace in his left hand, he used his right to slowly open the first lid of the parcel. The room went black. Time stood still, the necklace making a silent noise as it dropped from the trembling hand. This world was indescribable. Nothing was visible, only pure, bubbling black. Echoes of the fighters emanated in and out of this realm, lightsabers humming through parallels.
Know the truth. Learn to let go. Don't look back before you go. Before you leave.
His eyes opened. They were not blue, orange, or red. They were black. As if his pupils had dilated beyond the eye's corners and into his brain. Anakin was no longer Anakin. He was something else. Something the universe itself couldn't explain. He was larger than life or death. He was both at the same time, finally free. What Plagueis and Palpatine had accidentally created him for from his birth had become real. His training was complete. Walking over to Maul as the Jedi Masters and Sith Lords continued to fight, completely beknown to them that Anakin had opened the box to find the contents within. Anakin pushed Yoda and Windu into the wall, melting the stone around their bodies so that they could not interfere with what was about to happen. "Skywalker, don't give in to the hate!" Mace yelled as he tried to break free from the wall that swallowed his limbs, forced to watch and incapable of doing anything while Yoda was in shock at what he was seeing. Maul and Sidious faced Anakin as he walked towards them, his lightsaber on the floor behind him with the box and Padme's necklace. Maul smirked and readied himself to fight as he noticed Sidious back away in fear, running for his ship. Docked on the platform overlooking the second small hangar by the circular window, running with a look of shock on his face he had never seen before. Confused, Maul looked back to see Anakin an inch away from him, wondering how he moved so quickly across the room without him sensing it. Maul backed away, peering into Anakin's black, soulless eyes when he looked down to his stomach to see an entire arm through it. Feeling unbelievable pain as the hand retracted, he turned around, bleeding all over the floor to see Anakin standing behind him, dropping to his knees as he screamed into the ceiling, while the Chosen One caused Maul's eyes to burst into flames so hot that the blood charred before it could even spill out of his orifices. The Jedi Master on the wall shut their eyes as they couldn't watch any more of the horrid scene happening right before them. Anakin placed both of his hands on Maul's head, his horns protruding around Anakin's grasp, pushing inwards, breaking the horns off and squeezing Maul's head into itself as it oozed blood pouring out of the new cracks of his skull. Maul fell to the floor, lifeless. Anakin had no facial expression, not even anger. He was purely the Force, being bent at the will of the user. As Sidious began to board the ship, he put the thrusters on full blast to set course for a planet as far away as he could. Hearing the roar of the jet engines, he sat back in his chair, closing his eyes, wondering why it was still bright in the cockpit. It should have been as dark as space already as he had opened his eyes to see he had not moved at all. In fact, his ship thrusters were indeed on full blast, however, it was suspended in the air, not moving. As if it were tethered to an anchor the size of a planet, Anakin controlled the ship, moving it down from the ledge and onto the ground in front of him, between him and the box. The Emperor's spaceship split into two with a screech of metal and other alien materials separating at their molecular bonds. Palpatine hovered in mid-air, unable to move, floating towards Anakin. His powers were far beyond Maul's, but still no match for Anakin's new, unlocked abilities. Before Palpatine could even start his sentence, the lower half of his jaw had broken and dislocated from his skull, hanging like a rock on a thin string. his hands outstretched as his arms began to hug himself, but in the opposite directions of his joints, breaking all of his bones as he started to implode. Screaming for Anakin to stop, wishing for him to stop, Anakin's arms outstretched, he yelled a godly roar at Sidious. As the Emperor's skeletal system turned to fragments of dust, his eyes watching as his nose melted from his face and evaporated into the air. Feeling the pain of Anakin in his soul as the very pain that was inflicted on him physically, all he wished now was for death, which was coming for him fast. As his body disappeared into nothing, the two halves of the ship finally collapsed on the floor, denting the ground with its weight and immense size. Skywalker was like a god. Yoda had never seen anything like this in all of his existence, neither had Master Windu. As Anakin turned around, his eyes returned to their normal shade of blue again. He collapsed on the floor, face first, unable to move. Yoda and Windu harnessed the Force to break through the stone barrier now that Anakin had been subdued. Yoda placed his alien-like fingers on Anakin's skull, quickly removing it as if touching something hot. Anakin's temperature was beyond scolding. It was a wonder as to how he wasn't dead, as Yoda felt his throbbing pulse. Mace walked over to the box, curious to see what was inside, as Qui-Gon had never told them the contents. Standing over it, peering into the cracks with failure, he knelt down on a single knee, unfolded the flaps, and fell back. Yoda turned to face Windu.
Go, we must. Take Skywalker with us to Coruscant. Much training to the path of the light he does. Burn the box. Bring it with you. Do not.
The Jedi did as he was told by the wise master. Grabbing their cloaks, they entered the ship with the unconscious Anakin, setting course for the Jedi Academy. I hope you enjoyed this final installment. I had many different endings for this, some that ended in a part 4 even, but after reading all the comments, I knew you all wanted this one to be the final installment of the series. But to make sure I did justice by Anakin, by making sure his potential was fully explored, unlike in the movies. This script took me about 2 hours to write, and the editing will no doubt take another 10. By the time I splice the audio, add in the special effects, put the music perfectly right to every single scene, and then add the pictures that correspond to the made-up scenes. I'm hoping to have it out for you within 24 hours. I don't want donations or anything of that sort. The only thing I ask of you is to hit that like button. It greatly helps this video circulate YouTube, and we as the fans may actually pierce through to Disney, just as the fans of Deadpool pierce through to Marvel, who is owned by Disney as well. And they received the most gruesome superhero movie that we have ever seen. I think it would be pretty cool if we saw something like that with Star Wars, don't you? The next one I have my thoughts on is a What If series based on the premise of Qui-Gon having trained Anakin. What would you all think of that? If you have any other comments or suggestions you'd like for me to do in the future, let me know below. Thanks for the support, my friends. I wish you all have a great day or night wherever you are watching this in the galaxy, and as always, my fellow Jedi and Sith friends,
may the Force be with you.